Thank you very much. I'm very thankful to be with you and to be able to spend some time on a topic that I hope is helpful, and it's one that has been helpful to me, and I hope it will be helpful to you. Before we get into that, the program next month in October, the panel discussion about how do you create a culture where things get done and people matter. That to me is a difficult ethical balance. And I'm looking forward to the conversation about that. The panelists that are being lined up for that are people you're going to want to hear from. And then before I get too far into this, we just found out, and it was before the printing, that the speaker for November is going to be Kelly Masters. And some of you know Kelly Masters. She is a lawyer and a sports agent, and she is the first woman to have ever represented a first-round draft pick in the NFL. And she is clearly the leading female sports agent in America, and she's from our own backyard. And not only is she on ESPN, and she was highlighted in Southern Living just recently, she was Miss Oklahoma back, I think, in 1987 or so. You're going to want to hear from her. Passionate person and passionate speaker. And I want to say this about her. She doesn't speak for free, and we don't have any money. And so I told her this is where we are, this is what we're trying to get done. And she wrote me back and she said, I don't speak for free anymore, but I want to make an exception because what this does is worth that exception. And I just want to say when good people come together for good things, you tend to see good things happen. And I just appreciate people like that and look forward to having her here in November for us to be able to finish out the year with her as our speaker. So the idea of a growth mindset and how it builds a culture of ethics, this is from the work of Dr. Carol Dweck. Some of you may know Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford. This is her pioneering work on mindsets, and specifically Dr. Dweck's book, Mindset, and then her TED Talks and things like that might be helpful to you about this if you'd like to learn more or go deeper. But what you find is that in mindsets, and as she's describing them, there are two specific mindsets. The first is a fixed mindset. And I want to describe this for you because in a fixed mindset, there are two types. There are fixed mindsets and growth mindsets. In a fixed mindset, people believe, this is significant, people believe that their most basic abilities, like their intelligence or talent, are simply fixed traits. They spend their time documenting that intelligence or talent instead of developing them. They also believe that talent alone creates success without effort. Fixed mindset. So the fixed mindset believes that my intelligence is fixed, my talent is fixed, and then I'm going to pursue things that highlight my intelligence and talent the best I can. So a fixed mindset. A growth mindset, people believe that their most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent are just the starting point. This view creates a love of learning and a resilience that is essential for great accomplishment. So you get the idea. Fixed mindset, growth mindset. Fixed mindset, you took an IQ test one time and they told you that is your IQ. Growth mindset, you took your IQ test one time and they told you this is your IQ on the day you took the test. A different idea. Now look how this plays out in real life. Fixed versus growth. With the fixed mindset, intelligence is static. This mindset leads to a belief or a desire to look smart. And it starts young and well-intentioned. Let me show you how it works. I have a daughter that I dropped off at school 3 weeks ago to start her collegiate career, which people told me was going to be difficult, and they were right. Our family evidently does not like money, so she is a fine arts major, and that is her path. She is a painter, she is a sculptor, and she does digital art. And as her father, I'm a bit biased, but I think she's really good. And not only do I think she's good, I'll go ahead and brag on her a little bit. Some of her work, Pixar found her work, called her, and said, could we put your material on our Instagram? She was 17 at the time. She's pretty good. And this is what will happen. People will look at her work and they'll walk up to her, they look at the work, they look at her, they look at the work, they look at her, and then they say this, wow, you are so talented. I could never do something like that. I don't have an art brain. I'm not wired like that. It's a fixed mindset. Now, this is what will occur. A fixed mindset would imply that there are some people who can just do things easily, without effort. What they've not seen are the hours upon thousands of hours behind that talent to push forward. But this is how it begins, the fixed mindset. Your kid comes in. They've made 100 on their spelling test. They have 100 on the spelling test. They come in, Mom, Dad, made 100 on the spelling test, and this is what we do, well-intentioned. 100? Unbelievable. Congratulations. You are so smart. And when I do this, I'm creating the currency of smart. And so what can happen, if not balanced out, what can happen is if I'm dealing with the currency of smart and we want to do the things that make us feel good and I get praised for being smart, guess what I don't want to do? Anything that might not make me look smart. It's well-intentioned. So what happens is that you have this mindset that leads to a desire to look smart because that's the currency we're working with. And once this happens, you can see how it plays itself out. I look at challenges, and they have a tendency to look at things this way. Challenges, I avoid challenges. Not because I just think that that's the easier way to go. It's because I think that's the strategically better way to go. Because if I think that talent alone creates the opportunities for me, then I'm not going to do the things that are challenging, because here's what will happen. I'll walk into the difficult class, realize it's difficult, and say to myself, this is not for me. I don't have a languages brain. I don't have a math brain. I don't have a whatever it is, as if any of those things actually existed. But what happens? I avoid the challenge. Why? Because I'm trying to look smart. Keep going. Obstacles. I give up easily. And the reason I give up easily is, why would I waste time doing something when if I were good at it, I'd be already good at it? Keep going. Effort. I see effort as fruitless or worse. I look at criticism. I ignore useful, negative criticism because I'm the smartest person in the room. And if you understood my brilliance, you would agree with me. You see how this plays out? Now, the reality is all of us are a blend of fixed and growth. We have moments where we do it this way. We have moments where we're trying to show someone I'm so smart. And you'll find yourself triggered by different people, different things. The last thing on this one is how we look at the success of others. With a fixed mindset, I feel threatened by the success of others, because if I'm working with the currency of smart and someone else walks in the room who is smarter than me, now we've got a problem, because I don't think I could grow my intelligence. Do you see the challenge? Fixed mindset. Now, with this group, they tend to plateau early and then achieve less than their full potential. And what you'll find is they have a deterministic view of the world. Now, why do they do this? Because they've only chosen the things that they find easier to do. And so they will often be in your emerging leaders group. This is the downside of looking at the 20 under 20 or the 30 under 30 or 40 under 40. We can pick the winners and losers too early. And I wish it was the 30 under 30. The reality is, in a fixed mindset, if your kid walks into a classroom with a teacher who has a fixed mindset, you can see it in the first grade when they weren't chosen. Why? Because the teacher has already sorted them out. We'll put the smart kids over here. Even well-intentioned. Do you see what happens here? Companies do this all the time. We do it. I do it. Fixed mindset when you're trying to prove to someone else that you're smart. Now I'm going to show the difference between fixed versus growth. Look at the growth mindset. In the growth mindset, intelligence can be developed. And not only is that true, your IQ can be developed, your EQ can be developed, which is your bigger challenge in life anyway, your emotional intelligence. But if I look at this mindset leads to a desire to learn, and therefore a tendency to do the following things. Challenges. I embrace challenges. It's a learning opportunity for me. It's a learning thing for me. I'm going to take the class that's harder. Look how it plays itself out. Obstacles. I persist in the face of a setback. And the reason is the setback is not a loss. A setback is a part of the learning process in this mindset. Keep moving forward. See effort as the pathway to mastery. Effort as the pathway to mastery. Interesting. When I was a professor full-time, I would often have very bright students who struggled in college because they had not struggled in high school. They were smart enough to get through high school, make all A's without effort. And then they got to college. I'm thinking of one student in particular. His dream was to be a petroleum engineer. He had the intelligence to do this, but he did not have the mindset to do this. He went to Texas A&M, walked into a classroom on the first day, 120 other smart kids. The pace of the class was so fast, he could not keep up. 2 weeks into the program concluded, I'm in the wrong field. Now, what was the problem? He was smart enough not to have to learn how to study. So when the classes became difficult, when the pace finally caught up, the challenge was he did not know how to do something and didn't have the time to learn it on the job, so to speak. See how this plays out. Keep going. Criticism, I learn from criticism. I seek criticism. I want feedback. Why? Because I could get better. I got hired by an NBA coach to be his coach, which I thought was an interesting thing to do. Fascinating. So I'm working with this coach because he's trying to work with the athletes there on that team, and I won't tell you which one it is, but you can probably guess based on the fact that I'm from Oklahoma City, and it, does thunder there a lot, but I won't tell you which one I was working with. And so I'm working with this coach. We're working with different athletes, and here's the challenge. Imagine what it would be like to be told from the age of 12 you're the best. So what happens? I don't listen to criticism. Why? I have a fixed mindset. Why? Everybody's told me I'm the best. I just show up, I'm the best. I work hard, I'm the best. And you can hear it in this moment in press conferences. Listen for it. You'll hear it this weekend in football. Listen for it. Because this is what they'll say. I'm not listening to someone else tell me how to play the game. I know how to play the game. I'm not changing my game for anybody. What's the problem? They'll say they're uncoachable. What's the actual problem? They have a fixed mindset. I think Vince Carter, the NBA player, Vince Carter is fascinating to me. He's 42, 43, I think now. He is the only NBA player that has played in 3 different decades. And what's fascinating to me about him is that if you watch him in his early career, mid-career, and now, he has completely changed his game based upon what his body will allow him to do now. I would love to have a conversation with him, but I can already tell you he has a growth mindset. Tiger Woods coming back and winning the Masters, or whatever it was he won recently, that to me was fascinating because he could not rely on his physical capacity. He had to play the mental game in a very different way. What did he say? I have to change everything about my game. Major League Baseball is doing this right now too. They're using this in their draft process. They're talking to people on the way in, and they're saying to people, okay, if you get drafted, we bring you into the major leagues, how will things be different for you then? And some people on one end said this, well, I have to learn how to play in front of bigger audiences. That's the big challenge. On the other end of the spectrum, people said this, I may have to change every aspect of my game to play at this level. Which one do you think they recruited and drafted? The one with the growth mindset. Do you see the difference? Now, any of you who have hired a number of people, this is why you have never hired a hot shot and it worked out for you. Why? They often brought in with them a fixed mindset. And then there is that quiet leader who's just over there and never plateaus, and they get better and better and better and better and better. And maybe they are on the billboard, but you could not operate without them. Maybe it's you. What do they have? They have a growth mindset. Now keep on going. The success of others. They find lessons and inspiration in the success of others. Why? They're not trapped. Maybe I don't have everything I need, but study after study indicates that there is no leader who has it all. And it also indicates this. You will compensate with one area in areas where you're deficient in another. So if I'm hard of hearing, maybe my eyesight has to pick up. If my eyesight is poor, maybe I have to pick up being able to hear. But your senses change based upon the need. Guess what happens in leadership? The exact same thing. I don't have to have it all, but I have to believe I have enough to be able to modify that for the need, for the situation I'm in, the context. So looking at people in this world, they have the growth mindset. As a result, they reach ever higher levels of achievement. This gives them a greater sense of free will. I was asked to speak in Tishomingo, Oklahoma, a while ago at a summer executive program. And if you haven't been to Tishomingo, it was a surprisingly beautiful part of our state. Has the prairie grass down through there and the granite outcroppings, and then the Blue River comes through. It's a really nice place. It's very pleasant. So we're at this retreat center out in the middle of nowhere, and there are 30 people who are supposed to be part of this. I'm going to be leading it for a couple of days, and I'm not in charge of it. I'm just there to assist. And so the person who's in charge of it comes up and says, we've got 29 of the 30 people here. We've got one more on their way. She just called. She's almost here. We'll be here shortly. We're standing out in the front porch. It's July. That front porch has some shade. And we have 29 executives from Oklahoma who have descended upon Tishomingo who don't know each other well, and they are struggling because they don't know how to relax. This place, it's like they went out to Cracker Barrel and said, just buy all of the rocking chairs. So they put them all out there. And it's a funny thing watching executives trying to use a rocking chair without being informal. It's a funny thing how and I'm watching that. And I look out down the road, because the road goes about 1.5 miles. It's a dirt road out into the larger dirt road, which connects to the big road. And I'm standing there, and I see a cloud of dust coming up in the sky. And it is growing. It's like contrails of dirt. Here we go. And I see this car coming through the dust. It's a large sedan. And I'm thinking to myself, that person is moving, like they are flying down this dirt road. And I actually thought to myself, either this person grew up on a dirt road or they have never been on a dirt road, because it's one or the other, because they are moving. And so they keep coming towards us. We're all sitting out here and enjoying nature, the whole thing. They keep coming all the way up to where we are, and they stop the car. And then the dust cloud comes and coats the car, coats all of us. And she does not get out of her car until the cloud goes by, which says to me, she's from the country. She's from out here. And she gets out, and people are greeting her. I don't know her, and I'm still stuck on the car. So I'm looking at the car, and I can't figure out what kind it is. And I'm a car guy, and I'm trying to figure out what is that? And I'm looking at the badging on the front of the car, and it finally dawns on me what it is. The front badging has an M and another M, and then it dawns on me, this is a Maybach. Now, if you don't know what a Maybach is, I don't know why you would necessarily know what a Maybach is. It is the Mercedes-Benz luxury brand. It's the car you get in after you get out of your plane, so it kind of feels the same. Handmade, V12. The year they sold the most of them in the United States, they sold 147. These are ultra rare cars. And I'm standing there thinking to myself one thought. This is the only Maybach that has ever been off-road, and I got to see it. It was right here. Unbelievable. And then I'm thinking, who drives a Maybach to Tishomingo to the ranch? And it's this woman. And she's greeting everybody. She's older. Go inside, everybody's sitting around, and they have to introduce themselves, and it's her turn. And I'm thinking, who is this person? And she stands up and she smiles broadly. And she says, my name is Mo. I'm 79 years old. I turned 80 in 3 months. And I cannot wait because my 70s were my best decade. I can't even imagine what's going to happen in my 80s. And I thought to myself, you ever had that moment? I like this person. Then she said this, and I'm rich. I got a lot of money. Then I'm thinking, how old can you be and still be adopted? Because this is a situation I think could actually work out for everybody. She says, I've got a lot of money. Then she says this, and my goal is to give it away well. She almost sits down before she realized she didn't tell us her full name, and then she didn't tell us where she worked. She got back, she said, I'm sorry. She said, my name is Mo Anderson. I'm the vice chair, co-founder of Keller Williams. I've got 140,000 employees. The entire weekend just changed in that moment. Because the most successful person in the room embodied a growth mindset. She's 79 years old, almost 80, and she's at a leadership development weekend. She's so successful that her real goal is how to give the money away, not how do I get more of it. And she's at a leadership development weekend. Why? She never plateaued. She made the conscious decision not to plateau. Now she's 82. Go online, look her up. Mo Anderson. You'll find all kinds of stuff. She provides people for free online to serve people because she does not need to be active. And when she had her hip replaced earlier in the year, slowed her down for almost 3 weeks. It really slowed her down quite a bit. Why do I tell you about her? It's amazing to me to watch people who refuse to plateau. These are the people, as they grow older, they almost seem like they're getting younger in some ways. Why? They're growing. It doesn't have to stop. So if I look at this and think about the growth mindset at work, does this sound familiar to anybody? A fixed mindset is a culture of genius. We have the person who knows the stuff. In the company, the organization, the university, pick the thing, can become almost synonymous with that person because nobody else would know how to do this. Do you see the challenge here? So what's the challenge? The challenge is, how do we keep the culture if the genius isn't here? Now, if you could be honest with me, this may be how an organization may have to start, but have you ever seen it end well with that? What happens? The pressure gets more and more and more. The weight gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And the challenge is that genius cannot remain in that role. due to age, life, reality. But we see it all the time, don't we? A culture of genius versus a culture of development. So moving forward on it, employees in a growth mindset company where people are being acknowledged for growth, expected to grow, that when you hire them, it's not the end result, it's the beginning point. The person I just hired, I now have the starting point of who they're going to be, not the end result. I'm moving forward with them. I'm giving them opportunities to grow, expand, take risks. Look what happens here. 47% growth mindset companies, 47% say that they're more likely to say that their colleagues are trustworthy. Now you can imagine in a growth mindset company, look at this one. Over nearly half of people are more likely to say that they work in a place where their colleagues are more trustworthy than the typical place. Why is that the case? Because they don't look at their colleagues as competitors as much as so much as a cohort. We're learning together. This is not a gotcha meeting. This is not, I know the question I'm going to ask that you don't have the answer to. Let's wait until we get into a room full of people before I ask it to you. This is where I don't send an email to 47 people just to embarrass you. This is where it's okay to raise your hand and say, I don't know something. Before I came here, I worked at the Pepperdine School of Law. My boss was a guy named Ken Starr. You ever heard of, Ken Starr? People have pretty strong opinions about the guy. I was surprised to find that he was nothing like what you'd see on TV. He was a gentle and kind man. Maybe the best listener I've ever known. He would not take notes. He would sit there. I'd go to his office. We'd talk. I would sit there, and he would look at me, just sit there and look at you and just take in every word you're saying with almost perfect recall. It's crazy. Well, this guy is really, really smart. Brought him over to Oklahoma City for a program, and he just asked me about something, and he asked me a question, and I knew the answer, and I could answer the question easily, or I could use a big word that I'd paid nearly a quarter for. It was a good one. So he asked me about something I was talking about, and I said, well, the answer to that is, and I couldn't wait. I'm about to show him that I'm smart. I said, well, that's a phenomenological study, and I go, and I'm starting and he stops me, and he looks at me, and he says, Nathan, I've never heard that word before. Could you say it again? I said, well, it's phenomenological study. And he said, I don't even know what that means. Could you tell me what that means? And I felt like an idiot, and I just felt like, you feel like you're getting smaller? Why? Because I was trying to impress him with how smart I was, and with his growth mindset, he was not threatened by it and said, hey, this is a learning opportunity for me. I had a fixed mindset, he had a growth mindset. What's the difference? He is smart and has a growth mindset. What was I trying to do? What I always do when I'm insecure. Act like something I'm not. You following me? So what happens in a culture where we have a growth mindset? I can raise my hand and say, I don't know what that means. And I probably should, but I don't. It's not that you go through the entire meeting acting as if you know what they're talking about when you're furiously taking notes thinking, I've got to Google this as fast as I can. It's a culture of honesty. So keep going down the line here. Look what happens here. 34% are more likely to feel a strong sense of ownership and commitment to the company. Why? Because from day one, they thought they hired someone with capacity. Now, what happens when I work someplace and I've been labeled? In a culture of growth, I meet people where they are, and I don't expect them to stay there. We're going to provide them growth opportunities. And you can see it in how people invest in people. In a fixed mindset company, this is why they don't do learning and development. They don't think it's helpful. It's not that they don't like it. They don't see it as useful. Do you see the difference? Look at the next part. 63% more likely to say that the company supports risk-taking, and 49%, you can't see it there, or more likely to say that the company fosters innovation. Why? Because I'm able to say things out loud. So when we talk about this innovation of how do we have a growth mindset about things as simple as environmental issues, of how do we sort these different things, how do we do it? If I'm looking at a fixed mindset, that's not how we've done it. If I look at a growth mindset, I see a culture where innovation is accepted. What else could we do? How else could we do this? I think that Tulsa has a long history of a growth mindset. When I drive into the downtown, one, if you live here, you may not see it as I see it as someone who is driving here from time to time. This is a beautiful downtown. It is full of life, and it's having more life injected into it. Why? Because people looked at something and said, what if we could do more? So I came in and found construction here, 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 or pretty much anywhere I wanted to go. What does that mean? It means that people have decided that the future of Tulsa is still open. Identity is still available. We get to choose it. So looking at the last part of this, when entire companies embrace a growth mindset, their employees report feeling far more empowered and committed. They also receive far greater organizational support for collaboration and innovation. Look at this. In contrast, people at primarily fixed mindset companies report more of only one thing: cheating and deception among employees, presumably to gain an advantage in the talent race. Why would I do that? When I feel I cannot increase my intelligence, I have to remove my competitors. And so what do I use? I might use politics. I might use whatever it may be. Do you see the challenge here? So what happens is we put a lid on what people can become in an organization, and if they're too good, there's a reason why they don't fit here. Some of you, when you hire people, you are absolutely giddy when you can find someone who's better than you at the thing that you just hired them for. You hired someone who's better at you, smarter than you. You look at that as the high five win. It's because you have a growth mindset. Other people don't see it that way. So looking at where do we go from here, a handful of things I want to point out. To adopt a growth mindset is a choice. It's a process. It's a way of thinking. They did this with some parents that had, they did a scenario with athletics. It was a swim meet. The swim meet was this. You had parents who had a kid who came in third place with a fixed mindset. Then they tried to understand what that would be like. Then they had parents with a kid who came in third place with a growth mindset. Growth mindset parents and fixed mindset parents looked at this very differently. The kid gets third place in the swim meet. Fixed mindset, the parent said this place is rigged. We've never got a fair shake here. The whole thing, we're not coming back to this tournament ever again. This meet is not on our schedule ever again. Have you seen this? You can translate it. Fixed mindset. Growth mindset. Your kid came in third place. Growth mindset parent says this: third place, congratulations, wow. Now you know how hard you have to work to get second. Do you see the difference? This is my concern for our time. When you and I were going through school, they didn't have options. It was go that way and take the classes we told you to take. And yes, the teacher's horrible. You're going to have horrible people in your life. Get over it. What was the difference? We didn't have an option. We had to figure it out or fail. What happens today? Well, if you don't like this history class, we have 17 other ones. So what do? I don't know about you. In college, there was an underground intelligence of which teachers not to take, but you didn't know that as a freshman. You just showed up and got what you could get. My daughter, on her way to college, has looked up every possible professor. The CIA is not as good as freshmen getting information about people. I mean, this is crazy. So what happens? We've got to look at things differently. So look at a handful of things. Start at the top. As is all things in culture, it is extremely difficult for culture to change from the bottom up. It can happen, but very, very unlikely. At the top, don't just reward effort, recognize learning. This is what happened with the self-esteem movement, trying to make people feel better about themselves. We would tell them, you did great, you did great. Now you lost, and it was really embarrassing for all of us, but you did great, your effort. What's the problem with that? They know it. They know that it didn't go well. But what have we done? We've continued to reward effort versus reward learning. So what do people do with a fixed mindset that's different than a growth mindset? Fixed mindset people don't go back and look at a failure to learn from it because it can't be learned from. Growth mindset people look at what did not work and are trying to figure out how to make it work. So this is what happens. Growth mindset people say to someone else, that was an incredible event. Tell me about how you did that. Tell me about your process. What did you learn? So your kid comes in, makes 100 on the spelling test. You say this, congratulations. Tell me what you did to earn that. Well, I studied for 30 minutes. I did every word. I do it like this. And what am I finding? I'm rewarding the learning. I can redeem what happened if I can reward the learning that went with it. Keep going. And changing the mantra a little bit. I don't mean this to be legalistic. I just want you to be aware. Instead of saying things like find your passion, what about develop your passion? Because I find talking to young people, they think that there's a certain thing that they're supposed to find that is the answer to all the questions. If I could just find it. And you want to say, I do say to them, that doesn't exist. So what we're looking for, instead of just trying to find your passion, it's develop your passion. Scan the horizon for the needs. And if you are willing to serve people, there will always be a need. A person who is committed to service will never have a challenge with life purpose because there's always a need to be filled. So what do I have to do? I have to develop the passion. I have to train myself to it. Last part of this, reward people for choosing the challenging path. Reward them for choosing the challenging path. And then go back to what I was saying before. I want to reward the process. So if my kid is willing to take the challenging path, they're willing to try out for the choir or the orchestra that's the more difficult one. If they're willing to take the harder class because they might learn more. My daughter came to me the other day, and she told me about a class that she's taking, and I said, why are you taking that class? Because it's a really tough class. And she said, it's not because of the subject, it's because of the students who are in there. The students who are in that class are much more serious about school, and even though I don't like the subject, I like the people. She's going to be fine. Does that make sense? So wrapping this up, the thing that I would like for you today is to consider doing this. Go back. Add yet to your statements. Watch. I don't know how to do. I don't know how to do that. I can't paint yet. My mentor always wanted to play the piano, but he grew up with an invalid mother, and they didn't have they couldn't make the note. She was sick, and they couldn't play the piano because it was too loud. Went through his entire life, was a university president for 25 years. In his late 60s, he said, this is my chance. He bought the baby grand piano and got it installed, hired the tutor, and started with children's books. Why? Growth mindset. I'm willing to endure embarrassment in the process of being a novice so that I can enjoy the result of the hard work leading to mastery. You say, I can't speak another language. yet. My parents are passionate about helping people. They take medical mission teams to Guatemala to work with the Mayan Indians. They were in their 7th decade when they started taking their Spanish immersion courses. Why? They have no intention of slowing down. You say, I can't do it. You can't do it yet. Add that word. Promote character and ethical behavior, or something that is learned, and recognize that it must be learned and it must be taught. I want to get at this one last thing. I hear this all the time. You have to hire for competence. You have to hire for character. Because you can't teach character and you can train people. I want to be crystal clear with you. I understand the sentiment of that, and I also understand this. You can't teach people things who don't want to learn. With that said, there is not a time in which people stop learning character. Your character is always being shaped and formed. It is a learned thing. It always has been, always will be. And your character is not formed at 12, at 26, or 35, or 44, or 72. It is constantly changing. And your character is shaped by a couple things. One, your character is shaped by who you do life with. Your character is not shaped in isolation. It's shaped by community. Who you do life with matters, A. B, your character is shaped by who you view as heroic. If I look at someone and they're a hero in my life, I'm shaping my life to be more like theirs because I think to myself, it wouldn't all be bad if my life turned out a little bit more like that one. So review who are your heroes. This is why, to me, companies have to tell the stories of heroic moments if they want to change the character of the people there. You've got to talk about the things that people have done so that other people know that that's available. If they don't have heroes at work, you're going to keep getting what you've had. So when you look at these recognition moments of recognizing people for their accomplishments and for their character, tell their story because you are the keeper of the culture. And people say, well, I don't know that you can teach character. Let me keep going back to this because I really want to hammer the idea. That's not how the brain works. Someone who went down the wrong path in life can change course. How do I know? If you could have a time machine and go back to the version of you 10 years ago, and you could sit down with you 10 years ago, you now had a conversation with you 10 years ago, do you think you could give yourself some advice that might be helpful? Yes, because you've learned. I say this for hope, because here's my real issue with fixed mindset. With a fixed mindset, you can let a different version of you stay in control of your life, and that's not the role that person should have. You find people who let the 16-year-old version of them stay in charge because their identity was fixed. They made some choices when they were 18, and it has stuck. And they think to themselves, that's just who I am. It's a high price. And no disrespect to 18-year-olds. But you haven't talked to an 18-year-old recently and thought, they should be in charge of my life too. That just let them have control. Why? Because that would be entirely unfair. And I'm asking you to shake that and not let the person of the past be the person that you remain, but for you to take the wheel in your own life, deciding where you want to go. Because you can choose this. You can choose this. And what you'll find is that as other people around you choose to push themselves, I find that people become more courageous when other people are courageous because evidently it's contagious. So why do we do this in our companies? Why do we care about ethics? Because if you care about people, you care about ethics. Why? Because you want people to be treated well and for the ways of doing things to be known so that people will find that community as one to join. Companies who have values, and those values are known, have a gravitational pull into themselves. And people say to me, it's better to be ethical, make a little less money, and sleep well at night. And I'm trying to convince you that may be true, that you'd sleep better at night. But the companies that are ethical are outperforming the companies that are not year after year after year. You don't have to give up profitability to become ethical. Evidently, treating people well is good for business. And in the time in which we now live, when the actual issue, especially in commodity-based markets, is talent, what do you think millennials want? What do you think Z behind them want? They want to work someplace with people that they believe care about them, who push them, who believe in them, and want more from them. We can do this. And it may feel like a small group in a big town. But here's the truth. It has never taken a large group of people to make a big impact. But it does require people committed. And we are committed to the future of this community. Tulsa has always been the heartbeat of Oklahoma. And when I look to the future and I look what happens in our state, we need communities all around the state where people say those are the kinds of people you want to do business with. It matters. I'm going to wrap up with this. Some of you have asked me about my brother. I'm surprised that you knew. I guess social media does that. My brother's an inner city school principal over in Little Rock, Arkansas. And about 3.5 weeks ago or so, I got a call from my dad on Sunday night late. It was about 9 o'clock, and my father is breathless. And he said, your brother's been shot. Twice in the torso. We don't know what's going on. And in classic dad mode, he said, I don't want you to do anything about it. I just want you to know. So I get in the car to get to Arkansas. He was shot in Pine Bluff. It was a botched robbery. He and a friend had purchased a car, went to pick it up, and it was a setup. And some of you have asked about him, and I want you to know that he's going to do just fine. He is on the mend. It's going to be a slow process, but he is going to be just fine. So that was Sunday night, all night. I'm driving to get to the hospital. It's probably 2:30 in the morning, and I get a text that says he's going to survive. Get to the hospital, and the problem was that's now on a Monday, and that Monday's the same Monday I'm taking my daughter to go to college. So my wife and the kids follow behind, and I say, I'll meet you at the campus. They're also going to be at Harding University. So we're making our way over there. I'm making my way over there. They're already there. And I'm getting closer and closer to the campus, and my car starts acting funny. Lights off and on. So I get close to the campus, and it dies. I get it started again, and then I get it moving with enough momentum that it dies for the last time as I'm rolling into the parking lot of her dorm. And I could not be happier. I can deal with that later. Then I go take my daughter, who is 7, in my head still, into her dorm, get her set up. And then the next day, I had been asked several months earlier if I would do the faculty pre-session program, which I had not thought about where I would be emotionally, having dropped off my daughter and the whole thing. And I foolishly said, sure, I'll be happy to do that. So I got my brother over here, I got my daughter here, I got my car broken down, and now I'm speaking to the faculty that changed my life. And they brought back the professor who changed everything about my life, and they sat her right there just to see if I would cry. And I started off the morning and I said, very thankful to be here, and I mentioned that my car had broken down. And I get a text, And one of the people there says, my father-in-law works here in town. He's a mechanic. Would you mind if I took your car over to him? And I hate having people help, but I had no options. And I said, thank you. I took the car over there. Found, some of you already know what it was. It was the alternator. Had the alternator replaced. But I had captured, I think, every single bug from Oklahoma to Arkansas, driving through the night at what may have been a mile or two above the speed limit. The car is covered. Actually, it's more like a bug collection in the shape of a car. They detailed it, cleaned off every bug, and they pulled the car up there. And I said, thank you. And I reached to my pocket to try to pay for it. And they put their hands up in surrender. And they said, you're not paying for this one today. This is a gift from us to you. And I think about that mindset. What does it mean to do life with people who aren't just trying to do the minimum? I get back to the hospital and I watch those nurses with my brother. And then the letters start coming in. And then my brother's the inner city school principal, and it's a school where my brother had this revelation one day. Evidently, it's hard for kids to do well in school when they're hungry all day. Crazy idea. His school has 100% breakfast and has 100% lunch. But they don't just give them lunch. They eat in the classrooms with the teacher, family style. And as much as those kids love my brother, they could not understand the depth of his love for them. Hundreds of notes from those kids, magnets, wristbands, stickers for Lawson Elementary, Lawson Strong. Now, my brother is in an induced coma for a week. And he wakes up and he says a number of things that we had wished we recorded because it was pretty funny. I had said to my mother, this would be a great time to hire like a family of actors. So he wakes up, he says, who are you? And they say, we're your family. We don't know what are you doing? My mother thought that was inappropriate. I said we could get his ex-wife. He thought he would have. I'll stop there since it's being recorded. So none of those ideas passed. He wakes up a week later. In the first conversation, within the first 10 minutes, my brother looks at me and he says this: we've got to do something about this. What happened to that young man to make him think life is so cheap? We've got to do something about this. That is a growth mindset. We can do this. We really can. But we've got to decide together that it's going to be done. And I'm extremely thankful for you. This is not about ethics. That's just the language. This is about people. And we're making a difference. Thank you for your time.